What is up, everybody? Welcome into this Wednesday episode of Flippin Bats, where we got a great guest coming at you. One of the best pitchers in the game of baseball for the Arizona Diamondbacks, Zac Gallen. This is going to be an awesome conversation. One, I actually played against Zac Gallen in the minor leagues, and it turned out he had quite the bone to pick with me from when we played against each other down in Palm Beach when he was with the Cardinals organization. So that was fun to hear him bring up, but it ended up being a really awesome conversation. He was just named to the All-Star team, was the starting pitcher in the All-Star game. We're going to talk all about that and the outfit he wore on the red carpet and how it was starting that game, this Diamondbacks team, and how much fun it has been playing on a team that is on the cusp of being in a playoff spot, and just so much more from his life journey playing at UNC and getting drafted, and his funny call up to the big league story. This is a really, really fun conversation. I hope you all enjoy it. So without further ado, let's welcome in now Zac Gallen.
5 ball onto the track, at the wall, it's gone! Home run!
Turns on a ball, deep right field, and gone!
What a game, what a moment. All right, and I am pumped to be joined now by Zac Gallen, starting pitcher and all-star for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Zac, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, I want to start with the All-Star game because just saw you up there a couple weeks ago. I got to ask about the fit, the outfit you were wearing. I mean, is that the style you have? Is that typical for you? I mean, you looked great there on the red carpet.
I appreciate that. The style is probably within what I normally do. The Gucci sweater was definitely out of my comfort zone. But yeah, I'll, especially on the golf course, I'll rock the collared shirt with, a little sweater over top or, crew neck or whatever. So I figured I would just kind of elevate that, and, was looking for something to make a statement. I saw that sweater when I was out shopping, and figured I'd pick it up and see what we could do with it.
I mean, when you're the starting pitcher in the All-Star game, I feel like you got to bring the heat, and you did that. So I thought it was a good look. So your first All-Star game, first off, I can't believe it was your first All-Star game, but that's a different story because you've been one of the best pitchers in baseball for a few years now. But how was the experience overall for you?
Yeah, it was, it was everything and more, everything you kind of dream about, you hear about. It was awesome. But there's definitely not much downtime. I think I was up at 6:30, 7 a.m. each day to kind of get ready to, shower, eat breakfast, and then media and do all that stuff. So there's not much rest, but, I wouldn't have it any other way. My family and I had a great time.
I say somehow as your first because in 3 of your 4 full big league seasons so far, you've had a sub-3 ERA. So the fact that it was your first is crazy to me. Is that something that you've thought of in the past, like I should have been an all-star this year, and something that has a little chip on your shoulder?
For sure. But at the same time, like I get the context of how those seasons, came to be. Obviously 19 is my rookie year, got called up after the All-Star game. So, it is what it is. Not going to make the All-Star team. 20, the COVID year, no All-Star game again. And then 21, battled some injuries, got off to a pretty solid start, but, just couldn't put it together fully. And then last year pitched well going into the All-Star break, and, last couple before just kind of didn't pitch very well. And so this year I'm like, okay, I'm finishing this one through the All-Star break. That way I'd try and get there. But yeah, it's definitely something I use as motivation for sure.
Was it an easy decision for you to start the game? Once you were asked, did you know, like, I'm doing this 100%, I want to get the ball to start the game in the All-Star game?
Yeah, so I had talked to, I think Tori had a team party. Like, I think we had an off day that Monday after everyone found out, and we were at the party, and he was like, hey, just be like, heads up, like, it's between you and somebody else. So don't be surprised if I call you later this week and say you're going to get the start. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like, I would never dream that. I'm like, I'm just happy to go, just happy to be there.
Yeah.
And then he FaceTimed me on Wednesday or Thursday, I forget what it was, and was like, hey, so you got the start. So I called my girlfriend, then called my parents, and yeah, just let them know. So it was a no-brainer. And I think my schedule of rest kind of lined up to throw anyway. So I'm thinking, I mean, you never know how many you're going to get. You
Yeah.
don't know if it's going to be the last one, your only one.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to throw. So
I mean, I know it seems to be a really fun game for the players to play in, and obviously it's an exhibition. So were there no nerves when you took the mound, or were there more nerves than usual? Like, where were you at mentally for your start?
yeah, I wouldn't say there was a lot of nerves. I would say it's more just like you're just super like amped up,
Yeah.
really. If that like, I've never been a part of something that on that grand of a scale. And you get to fly over and you have all the extra stuff that's player announcements, all that stuff that like kind of just comes into play. So for me, it was a good test and a good kind of preparation for, what I've heard the playoffs and the World Series look like. So just to kind of control those emotions, kind of, stay within yourself really. But yeah, I wouldn't say I was super nervous. I'm like, it's an exhibition game. So it's like, just have fun, see what happens.
It's got to be cool to not have the nerves there, but for it to still be a situation where you get super amped up for it. I remember the All-Star game in DC years ago where Max was starting, and like every pitch he threw in the first and every heater he threw in the first inning was like over 100. It was like, good God, this guy is amped up.
I wish I had that. I was looking, I'm like, all right, what am I going to hit today? 'Cause I'm not a huge velo guy. I'm like, do I get the first 98 of my career? And the first pitch is 93. And I was like, wow, that's a long way from 98. So I don't think we're good. So I think our training staff and everybody was happy that my velo didn't, spike. Cause I've heard of stories where guys' velo spiked and, 2 weeks later they're on the IL just because, they, overdid it or whatever.
Who was the coolest person you got to meet up there that you hadn't met before in Seattle?
Derek Jeter, probably. I grew up a Derek Jeter fan. For me, at first it was McGuire. And then as I got a little bit older, it was Derek Jeter. I wore two. I wanted to play shortstop. Just being from the Northeast, that's a guy that is on TV all the time and you see him and, he's everywhere. So to finally get a chance to meet him, especially after, being in Miami for a couple of years and not having a chance to talk to him, I thought was a cool experience.
So we talked about whether it was or was not an All-Star game snub. Somehow last year you finished fifth in the Cy Young voting, and I read something that said on your phone you have a list of the writers that didn't put you on the Cy Young list to give you motivation. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So I didn't personally write them down, but I have the full results of like who voted for who.
So it wasn't like you're sitting there, Tom Smith.
No. Yeah, no. And it wasn't like that vindictive, but I do have the screenshot of who's on there, who voted for me, who didn't, where, like just the regular results that everybody sees. And I had one writer that actually came up and apologized to me. I was like, out of nowhere, he was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry." And I was like, "For what?" And he's like, "I didn't have you on the ballot and I should have. Like, this isn't because you said, like, I just messed up." And I was like, oh wow, like, all right. So it's kind of like the Billy Madison where like you're crossing the name off the list. It's like, so I'm like, all right, I'll spare you another day, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that, like it doesn't mean no good now. Like, great, thanks. But I guess I feel better.
It's like when an umpire misses a call and they're like, "Hey, I missed that one." It's like, yeah, I know you missed that one. I said it was all over the plate. It's like I can't do anything with it now. Like,
yeah.
So
the least favorite thing, my most hated statement from umpires when I was hitting was, like as a pitcher, I feel like when you got a call that might have been 2 or 3 inches off. As a batter, I know when a ball was 2 or 3 inches off, and I would typically not turn around and say something, but just say like, that was off. And then my most hated response was, "That was a good pitch, Ben." And I'm like, I don't care if it's a good pitch. There's a plate there, and I know it was off of the plate. So
yeah, I know. So yeah. Oh, there's certain times like I'll be in the game and I'll get a pitch like, our catchers do a good job bringing it back on, and I'm like, to myself, I'm like, thank you. Like to say to myself, to the umpire, thank you for calling that, because I know that wasn't a strike. But yeah, I don't know. That's a whole different conversation. We can have it another time.
Last year, for you 44 and a third consecutive scoreless innings. I think that's 7th all time, 6 consecutive shutouts, which ties for the most. What was that stretch of baseball like for you?
Yeah, it was, I don't know. It was wild, honestly, because like I said, the streak didn't start. It started after the All-Star break, but it was like, I think I had like 2 good starts, and then I had like an okay one in Cleveland. And then after Cleveland, like I just went on a run. And I just, to myself, like going into the All-Star break, I'm not a big like numbers guy. I don't look at my numbers, but I'm like, I'm pitching better than what my numbers say. Like,
Yeah.
what do I need to do to get to where like I think I had a, respectable year or whatever. So for me, I'm like, all right, I have 14 starts left. Let's go see if I can go 7 innings, 1 run. 14 earned runs the rest of the way, and start off pretty good. And then, like I said, I had an okay start in Cleveland, and then it just clicked. And I didn't know I had the streak had a streak until after San Francisco. I think I'm at like 21 innings or something.
That's what
like
I was
that.
going to ask. When in your head did you realize the streak came about?
I didn't know it. So I think I did a post-game interview, and Todd Walsh, one of our Bally's reporters, said, you haven't given a run 21 innings. Like, I had no idea. Like, and my dad said after the game, because I left that game with a runner on second base, but I think they got on with an error. He's like, man, thank God, that run didn't score. And I'm like, as a pitcher, like, it's unearned. Like, we're up 10-0. Like, it's whatever. He's like, no, you haven't given a run 20 something innings, whatever it was. And then, I go the next start was probably the toughest for me in Kansas City, because at that point I'm thinking about it. I'm like, all right, now they expect me not to give up a run. Went out there and pitched, on the defense, pitched scared. And I said, all right, from that point on, like, I got to go out and earn this thing. Like, I got to take it. I'm going to pitch on the offense. And yeah, I mean, it was just a crazy run of, I think I turned 27 the day after I pitched in Cleveland, didn't give up a run for like a month. So I'm like, man, this age 27 thing's pretty solid if you ask me.
So you knew in your head, 14 starts left, let's try 14 earned runs or less. Do you know what that final total was?
If you would have asked me like a few months ago, I probably would have told you. I think I might have given up 15 earned runs. I don't remember, but I know like the streak obviously helped. And then I think I gave up 3 against San Diego, 3 in Colorado. Like, it was close. I think I might have gotten under it. It might have been 10 earned runs. I don't know.
And then I got to ask about this. Earlier this season against the Royals, you threw what might have been the nastiest pitch I've ever seen. And it got listed as a changeup, but I don't know. One, it cut like 12 inches. It moved 12 inches horizontally. Did you intentionally throw that pitch? Like, what happened there?
No, I wish there was supposed to be a changeup. And I don't know if my arm was super late or whatever it was, but the way the ball came out, it just cut. And I wish I could recreate it. People were like, "Are you you're gonna work on that thing?" And I'm like, if I knew how to throw this thing, I would throw it every time. Like, just the spin looks weird. So yeah, no, that was totally by accident. It had, I think, just as much kind of, induced vertical break as my fastball with like 9 inches of cut. So it's like, you're throwing a fastball that is like a slider essentially.
So it was to my buddy, Vinny Pasquantino. We went to ODU together, and now he's in the Royals organization. And his comments on it are hysterical. He said, this was quite possibly the craziest pitch I've ever seen. I've never been more confused in my life. Was it a cutter? Was it a changeup? Somehow it was both.
I saw that on Twitter, and I was like, yeah, I don't know either. And it was like, I felt bad at the umpire, and like, yeah. And the zone was pretty solid that day too. So I was like, oh man, there goes the good zone for the rest of the game. But yeah, I have no idea. Like, I wish I could recreate it. I wish I knew how it worked, but just, yeah, it's inexplainable.
You've had, there's been a lot of coaches, managers, hitting coaches come out and praise you for the way you pitch. And as a guy that was a hitter professionally, though I might not be the best example because there were way too many 0 for 20s in there, but you're supposed to go up with a plan and know a pitcher and try and understand what he's going to do to you. But a lot of hitters and coaches will say that you're a guy that doesn't really have a pattern that somebody can pick up on. Is that something you pride yourself on, is never trying to fall into a routine? And, a lot of pitchers will have like an 0-2 go-to pitch. I mean, you're a guy that doesn't seem to ever fall into a pattern.
Yeah, it's not something that I'm necessarily. I don't know the exact word for it, but yeah, I'm essentially just trying not to telegraph sequences. Try and think of different sequences. Like I'm always trying to do some sort of self audit of myself. Whether it's 2 months into the year at the All-Star break, after a couple starts, just to kind of see like what my usages are, just what's working, what's not working. Trying to see how a team, approached me last time, if they had success, if they didn't, and just trying, like, for me, I always just think of it as like a chess match. Yeah. I'm trying to be 2, if not 3 moves ahead. And yeah, just try not to fall into those patterns. I mean, that's just I've always been a guy who hasn't had crazy stuff. So I've kind of just had to learn how to pitch, mix, and just kind of try to outsmart guys. I think when I try to fall in love with, 1 or 2 pitches is when I can, have, problems.
It was cool. I have John Smoltz on the show every Saturday. And when I knew you were coming on, I asked about you, and from a Hall of Famer's perspective, like what he likes watching about you, because you aren't a guy that's going to throw. We see 100 all the time in baseball now, but you're one of the best pitchers in the game without doing that. So I asked him what he thought about you and getting to watch you pitch, and I thought his answer was really cool. So let's listen to
that. Very clean mechanics, sneaky fast, and everything he does, right? Ball gets on the hitter. He's rarely in the middle of the plate, and he mixes up his pitches. He's got the complement to take out a left-hander and a right-hander. But I love the clean mechanics. He's not going to wow you by falling off the mound and throwing 100, but he's going to do the things that you have to do to pitch in this league. I'm a big believer. We know the game has changed and hitters can hit the ball a country mile. But if you can put the ball where you want to almost every time, you're going to expose hitters. You don't have to throw 98. And it's a luxury to throw 98 and get away with more mistakes in the strike zone, but that's a false sense of security that won't last forever. What Zac Gallen is doing is he can repeat his mechanics, and he knows where the ball's going, and he makes very little mistakes in the middle of the plate.
Just to have, somebody of his, stature in this game, and especially as a pitcher, be so complimentary is, it just makes this thing all the more surreal. All of it just kind of, as somebody that loves the game, like I think for me, the thing that drives is like just being on I don't want to say like level playing field, but like at least your peers like know who you are. That's something that fires me up. So it's, I take a lot of pride in that.
I want to talk about you personally, being from New Jersey. As you mentioned, you ended up going to UNC. What went into that decision? Was UNC always on your radar, or was that just something that came about from them scouting you?
Yeah, I always wanted to go to Carolina. I grew up, my dad was a Carolina fan, like way back in the 70s. He had family that moved there. I loved Michael Jordan because my brother. And then when I was starting to take notice of college baseball, and the College World Series being on ESPN when I'm in, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, something like that, Carolina was there every year. So for me, I'm like, I love Carolina blue. Like the colors just look awesome. Like I want to go to Carolina. And I think they kind of knew that just from an early age. So, I think it was down to them. Oklahoma State and LSU were my final 3 schools. And I'm going to guess that my travel coach was like, hey, just be patient while he takes his other visits, because you guys are he's still going to commit there, but he's got to do his due diligence. But yeah, it was awesome. I had a great time there. It was the best.
You end up getting drafted out of there, 2016 3rd rounder. What was your draft day story like for you? How cool was that day?
Yeah, so it was, I don't want to say like a letdown, but just going into the draft. Yeah, no, not necessarily a letdown. It was more like going into the draft. It was like, didn't necessarily have like a concrete, like spot where I was supposed to go. We had heard as high as like the back end of the 1st round. And then obviously like to the end of the second round. So I mean, those are kind of like just soft guidelines. So I remember driving home. I drove home the day of the draft from North Carolina, and I remember talking to my brother on the phone, and he's like, "What do you think?" He's like, "What do you know? Where do you think you're going to go?" And I was like, if the college arms go early, I was like, I'll go higher than we think. If they go later, then I'm going to slide. Sure enough, the high school arms went first. So I started to slide. Don't get picked in the first day. And then the second day, we're all, at my Aunt Jennifer and Uncle Jimmy's house. And we're just sitting there, and the draft is on the computer or whatever. And sure enough, we're sitting there, and I forget who was in there. My dad or my uncle or both were in the computer room, and they just jumped. I'm like, and everyone went crazy. So like, it was kind of a just organic, natural way of being drafted, as opposed to the, normal team calls you, hey, we're going to pick you in 5 minutes. So like, as much of a letdown as it was not to go, on day one, the organic kind of just everybody having, just natural excitement, I think was worth it.
Aside from a couple starts in rookie ball, you pretty much, you skipped short season, you skipped low A, and you start in high A in Palm Beach. And it was the same year I was there in Lakeland. So I don't know if you ever faced Lakeland in your time in Palm Beach, but there's a pretty good chance that we might have faced each other. And I might just not remember it because I probably got punched out. But did you ever face Lakeland? Do you know?
I want to say yes. And what's funny is 21-year-old me from the Palm Beach Cardinals has a bone to pick with you.
Oh, no.
So obviously I'm not trying to, air you out here, but there was a game that we were playing in Palm Beach, and it was a day game, and it was the pace was unbelievable. I think the game went over an hour and 45 minutes. And
I think I know where this is
someone
going.
who may or may not be named dropped a fly ball in right field, and the game lasted 4 hours, and I was charting that day. In the May heat of Florida. So I just want to say I really appreciate that you dropped that fly ball and we were out there for 4 hours.
You know what I remember about that game? One, our GM was actually in the stands sitting right behind home for that. So obviously whenever you have like the big brass in town, you're like, all right, like let me make sure I play the game hard, do the right things, have a good game. So then I remember, because it was 1,000,000 degrees outside, and I remember I ran in, and it was like a shallow pop-up. So I went to look to make sure everybody was getting out of my way, and then I looked back up and I couldn't find the ball, like nowhere to be found. And then I finally found it last second and ended up dropping it. In case you're listening, the player to not be named that dropped a fly ball was me. And what I remember, I think Randy Arozarena actually hit that baseball, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. Yeah, he did. Yep. It was Randy. I was going to say, I remember Randy hitting that ball, and I'm like, I think we would have lost 1-0, which is like, I think we wound up coming back to win that game. But when it's May and A ball and it's 900 degrees and you're charting, you don't care who wins the game. You're like, as long as this game gets over in like 2 hours, this is great. Day game. It was brutal.
Yep. Well, I will take this time to apologize for making your experience behind the plate that much worse. I do remember because it was the one fly. I've obviously made errors in the outfield professionally, but from like throws that get away from guys. But that was the one pop-up fly ball that I ever just clanked in the outfield. So I'm glad you were there to experience that, and we can talk about it here today. This is therapeutic.
I will take a little bit of blame because I'm pretty sure I either said to myself or to whoever was charting with me, I'm like, we're on a good pace, right? Because it was like the 6th inning, I think. I was like, we're on a good pace right now. I'm like, we could get to the beach. Like, this would be solid. And then sure enough, like the next half inning, I was like, oh, man. And then it was like 14 innings. So, yeah. But I think I did throw against Lakeland. That time was a blur. That league at that time, there were some really good players. Like I was telling guys the other day, we just played the Braves, and that Fire Frogs team was unbelievable that year.
Yeah.
Like Acuna, Riley,
yep.
And they were all 18, 19. It was just, there was really good talent that year in that league.
It's one of those, I've told this before, but I pitched in college. I did both in college. So professionally, like when a game became a blowout, I would obviously volunteer to be the guy to pitch. And I did. We were getting our ass kicked by the Fire Frogs team with Acuna and Austin Riley. And I came in, punched out the first guy. I think it was Alex Jackson. We've actually talked about it since. Punched him out on 3 straight fastballs. And then this next guy comes up. I get ahead again, 0-2. I felt like I was throwing 105 miles an hour. I wasn't, but I did touch 92 there, which was good for me. The other Verlander got all the velocity. I didn't have it. But so this next guy comes up. I get ahead 0-2 on 2 fastballs, and then I shake my catcher as a position player in a 17-0 ball game.
I got this.
Yeah,
I got this.
Trust me, I was a pitcher. Throw the nastiest curveball of my entire life, and it's hit for a rocket off the wall in right center field, and that ended up being Ronald Acuna, who turned out to be pretty good at baseball.
Yeah, solid player. I like Riley, to me, more like at that time, was harder to game plan for than Acuna, which is so wild to say. Like, but watching Riley play was like, okay, that guy, he was supposed to go to Mississippi State, I think. I'm like, if this guy would have been a freshman this year, he would have hit 50 home runs probably in the SEC. Like, it would have been a joke. So, like, watching him play, and then I think Acuna might have went high AA, AAA that year too, or something along those lines. But when we played him, like, you could tell he was a really good player, but there was just something about Riley that was like different. I'm like, okay, this guy, like, at 19 to be in high A, there's something legit about this guy. Yeah.
You end up shooting up through the minors as well, high A, AA, AAA, end up traded to the Marlins. How'd you find out about that trade?
Let's see. Where was I? I was in Palm Beach. This is the story that kind of went viral like not too long ago, but I was in Palm Beach. They had us come down for a camp, like a winter workout camp. I don't know. It was like, they had me come down for 2 days. I was told after the fact, hey, you didn't really have to be here, but, thanks for coming anyway. I'm like, all right. So I wasn't really too happy about that. And get to the airport, and we see that the Cardinals had agreed to a trade with the Marlins for Ozuna. And I forget at the time if we knew somebody was like, if we knew Sandy was in the trade already, if it was somebody else or whatever, or they didn't name him yet. And I remember looking at one of the guys that was there in the airport with me. I was like, man, everybody's getting traded. That sucks for them. And like, little did I know, like 2 hours later, I landed in Charlotte for my connecting flight, and my phone I didn't turn it off. So like, it just like, as soon as you get back to the service, you know how it is, like, and it just started to ring and buzz and all. And I got a call from one of the guys from my agency, and I'm like, oh, this can't be good. So I let it go to voicemail, listen to the voicemail, and he's like, I'm sure you've heard about it now. I'm like, nope, haven't heard anything. So I went right to Twitter, saw it. Yeah, it was a whirlwind. My mom texted me, she's like, did you just get traded? I'm like, I guess. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out. So, yeah.
So in 2019, you end up getting your call up to the big leagues. And I like asking everybody this story because I didn't get it. You always want to get that phone call, and to get it in 2019, what was that moment like? How did the call to the big leagues happen for you?
Yeah, it was kind of wild, actually. Well, I don't know, wild, but like, I was having a pretty good year in AAA that year. And it was to the point where I was like, all right, what more else can I do to show that I'm ready? I was like, I felt like I had checked every box in AAA. I mean, the unfortunate part was that, well, unfortunate for me, but fortunate for the other guys, like, nobody got hurt. So like, there was no spot for me to pitch. So a starter goes down. I want to say it was Caleb Smith or Pablo Lopez. One of those guys goes down, and I'm like, okay, my start is coming up. Like, that'll probably be my spot.
Yeah.
And I think they would have to push me back a day or whatever. So I'm thinking I'm gonna get called up. No call up. So I wasn't happy about that. My agent just kept being like, hey, listen, whatever you do, don't change what you're doing. Just try and stay healthy. So I was pretty fired up about it. I think all the coaches and every other players were like, kind of like, what, we were kind of surprised. So
yeah,
I'm voicing my opinions, venting, like, whatever, to the pitching coach. I make one start in El Paso, throw fine, like, whatever, it's whatever. And we go to Albuquerque next. And after the Albuquerque flight, on the flight home to New Orleans, the manager comes up to me, and I'm watching a movie, and I thought he was going to say something about the movie that I was watching. and he taps me on the shoulder and he's like, "Hey, when you get off this flight, you're going to be a big leaguer." So I took my headphones out. I was like, "What? Say that again? What'd you say?" And he was like, "When you get off this flight, you're going to the big leagues." And I was like, "No way." So I had to sit there for like an hour and a half, and like my teammates started to find out, like guys that were sitting around me, and they were like, "Really?" Like, but it was a late flight, like people weren't going to go crazy, and I couldn't tell my family, couldn't tell anything. And then I got off the flight, and all the guys were waiting for me, gave me handshakes, hugs, whatever. Yeah, it was crazy. I got home at like 2:30 in the morning and had to pack, call my family, let them know, "Hey, this is what's going on." Yeah, it was. I don't think I slept like for probably 20 something hours.
You end up getting traded to the Diamondbacks. Basically, it was you for Jazz Chisholm, and a couple of years ago, Jazz said he wanted to homer off you as the guy that he was traded for. And I love Jazz came on the show. It was a great episode. I love the guy. Since then, though, Jazz has gone 0 for 9 with 3 punch outs against you. Is there some extra motivation there in that matchup between you two?
I mean, I think there was at first.
Yeah.
Obviously, that I feel like I never really thought about like the trade. Like I never think about the trade like the Ozuna trade. Like I'm never like checking Ozuna's stats or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like trying to like keep up. So like for me, I wouldn't have really been concerned about a guy getting traded for. It was somebody I never ran into Jazz, never played against him. Like just didn't really know anything about him really. So like for me, I wasn't really cognizant of the trade. And then he had said that, whatever podcast he was on. And so I'm like, okay, like now there's going to be added, whatever to this thing. But like that was 2 years ago. And for me, like, I'm not somebody that pitches with a lot of emotion. And that first start against Miami, I definitely was pitching with a lot of emotion. Like, you could see my velo was up extra high that like first 3 innings. Like, so, and I've just kind of learned that it's exhausting. I mean, it's just like, now it's just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna go out and do my job. I'm trying to help my team win. He's a good player. Like, I know that the 0 for 9, like it's probably not going to last. So to build this thing up and make it just nuts is just like, is way too much on the mental game. And I need to have, all my wits about me.
How cool is it for you when you get called up to the Marlins? Obviously not, they're a good team this year, not a great team yet. And then the D-backs for your first couple of years there started to show signs of being good. And then this year, I mean, you're getting to pitch every time out in the middle of a playoff push, and went really well in the first half. I know the second half hasn't been quite as good as the first, but you guys are still just a couple games out of a playoff spot right now. How much fun is it for the first time in your career to really be pitching to get into the playoffs?
Yeah, it's crazy. So this is actually the second time, I guess, technically. So when I got traded from Miami to Arizona, they were in a playoff race. So for me, like, I think I was kind of naive in the sense that, like, I just got traded from Miami, who's in a rebuild, reload, whatever you want to call it, to a team that's now like 2 games out of a wild card spot and is like, went to the playoffs in 17, led the whole entire division in 18, and then just struggled in September down the stretch, and then 19. So it's like, okay, I'm going, like, I didn't really know that like there was this kind of success over the last couple of years, because like when you're not in the minor leagues, you're not necessarily paying attention to like what's going on in the big leagues in terms of standings and all that stuff. So like, yeah, I think I was just kind of not necessarily oblivious, but like, all right, I'm just going to pitch. Like, I'm just trying to survive in the big leagues. Like for me, I just want to stay here. So there wasn't really this added amount of pressure, but it was like, you could tell each game was like, there was something on the line there for each game. And then obviously the last couple of years have been tough. And then last year, you kind of saw that last 2 months of like, all right, let's play this thing like we're in a playoff race. You started to see guys coming up. Like, there's this fun part about being a young team that gets to play spoiler, because it's like you're getting that feeling of playing in a playoff race. Like, you're like, all right, we're like, no, there's something on the line for us too. We have to prove something. And then, like you said, start out hot this year. And yeah, I think just having those. Not that every game isn't meaningful in the big leagues, but having those games where it's like live or die every night is definitely something that you can't teach. Like, you just have to experience. So I think, the experience for us is huge.
How excited does this year make you for the future of the Diamondbacks? Obviously, this year, you could get into the playoffs this year, but the writing's on the wall that this team is going to be good for a long time to come. I mean, Corbin Carroll's a superstar, and there's so much young talent around this team that, I hope you guys get into the playoffs this year, but the future is clearly very, very bright. And to have what seems like now the first time that this organization is willing to buy in on you guys and going to get a bat at the trade deadline, it feels like the writing's on the wall for this D-backs team to be good for a long time.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. I would say that talking to the front office, they've lived up to their word in the sense of, like, when I came up, or like one of my first couple years, it's Bobby Witt and it's Julio Rodriguez, played really well, have an unbelievable season as their rookie year. And I'm like, okay, where's our guy? Like, where's that guy for us? Like, when do we get that guy? And they're like, don't worry, he's coming. And I'm like, all right. And then Corbin gets here, plays a month last year, and you could see that, like, it was there, but like in a month, you have no idea, like, what,
Right.
He's coming off injury and all this stuff. And then this year you saw who is Corbin Carroll, and I'm like, okay, they're on to something here. They're bringing guys up. So yeah, there's just, the organization's in good hands. There's guys even in the lower levels, guys like Jordan Lawler, just, to name one of the guys. But yeah, we brought up guys that, are getting their feet wet and seeing what it takes to kind of stay in this league. I had a coach back in the day tell me, he's like, it's hard to get to the big leagues. It's even harder to stay there. So it's like, these guys are starting to understand, like, okay, this is a grind every night. It's not just like let's just roll the balls out and see what happens. So, but yeah, the organization's in great hands. Hazen and Amiel and Fitz and those guys, they've done a great job of, like, putting the pieces in place and understanding there needs to be depth here and depth there. And so, yeah, it's been fun to kind of see it, take shape.
Couple fun ones for you to finish up. Of everywhere to play in the major leagues, taking your home stadium out of it, what is your favorite place to visit?
Oof. Let's see. I have a couple. So I grew up a Cardinals fan. So anytime I get to Busch Stadium, for me, that's kind of like, as a kid, like, I always wanted to go to Busch Stadium. We never got to go there as a kid. So for me, every time I get there, there's just a little bit more of an appreciation, just because it's something that, 5, 6, 7-year-old me would have. Obviously, it's not the same Busch Stadium that was there that I grew up watching, but still, this is just like, yeah, this is cool. Like, this is something you dreamed of as a kid. I think Dodger Stadium is the place. I haven't played in Yankee Stadium yet or Fenway, but to me, Dodger Stadium is the place that feels like the big leagues the most.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is the big leagues. This is like, there's celebrities sitting behind your dugout. Like, one of the first weekends I got called up in Miami, we played in the Dodgers, and sitting behind the dugout over that weekend series was Owen Wilson, Bryan Cranston, and Jason Bateman. And I'm like, does this happen all the time? It hasn't. I've only seen, I think, Bryan Cranston like one other time at the stadium. But yeah, I'm like, okay, this feels like the big league. So those are, a lot of them are really cool. San Francisco's cool, San Diego's cool, and Wrigley, obviously, with the history. But for me, it's, I'd say probably Busch Stadium and Dodger Stadium are pretty cool.
Do you have a least favorite?
I think my least favorite would be the same for a lot of people in the big leagues.
The Oakland Coliseum.
Yeah,
that's the general consensus. It's always either the Oakland Coliseum or somewhere where a guy gets lit up or can't hit. It's always either one or the other.
I will say that Cincinnati is not my favorite, just because it's tiny. They call it Great American Small Park, so like it's just kind of like it's one of those ones where you're like, man, am I getting to pitch in Cincinnati this time? All right, dodge the bullet. So yeah, the Coliseum, is definitely not my favorite.
Last one for you. In the outfield earlier this year, speaking of the Coliseum, this happened there. You killed a bird in the outfield. What was going through your head when you hit a bird in the outfield?
I have no idea, honestly. This is that the video right there. It's like, So I'm working on my curveball right there, just like playing catch with DC, one of our pitching coaches, and I threw a curveball and he just like whiffed on it. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And then I just kind of see like I saw what I now know is the bird like tumbling towards him and like hits him in the leg, and then he whiffs on the ball. I thought he got hit in the shin. And then I realized he's like looking around, like seeing what's going on. And I realized he got hit in the leg with a bird. So there's nobody out there but me and him and two ground screw guys. And I'm like going like, oh, like have no words, just going crazy. And these ground screw guys are like, what is this guy doing? Like, what is going on? So there's guys in the dugout and I come in, they're like, what is going on out there? I'm like, I just killed a bird with a baseball. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, I have no words. And they're like, we don't believe it. I'm like, it's out there. You can go see it. So we went, and the AC, our video guy, had him pulled up on like the, replay, like all that stuff. And we're looking at him like, no, like, I can't believe it. Like it's nuts. Like it was, and the bird was like flying towards me, and a curveball of all things. Like it's not straight. Like, it was just kind of like, I don't know. It was wild.
Zach, I appreciate you joining me, man. I really just wanted to have you on to apologize for taking the time out of your life that you'll never get back of dropping that pop-up down in Palm Beach. So sorry.
Extra 2 hours I could have had on Juno Beach.
You could have been on the beach, but you ended up having to sit in 105 degrees and bake in the stands in Palm Beach.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate it, man. Have a good luck the rest of the way. Keep going, man. I'm rooting for you in this season, the Cy Young voting and all that. You're going to get one at some point in your career. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Good luck. See ya. All right. Just wanted to thank Zach again for joining me. Really fun conversation. And the second he said, I have a bone to pick with you, I was charting behind the stands. I knew exactly where he was going because I do remember that. I think about that often, actually. It was the one time I dropped a pop-up in the minor leagues and Randy Arozarena hit it. So I remember it very well. But a really, really fun conversation talking about pitching with him. I truly think he is the most underrated pitcher in the game of baseball. I mean, 3 of his 4 seasons, he's had a sub-3 ERA. He has been incredible in his career. So a really fun conversation to be able to have with him on his journey to where he is now and his pitching and how he goes about pitching in that unbelievable changeup cutter he threw to my buddy Vinny. Just that was the most disgusting pitch of all time. But wanted to thank Zach again for joining me. I hope you all enjoyed listening. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. We're also on all social media, including YouTube, where you can watch every single thing we do at Flippin Bats Pod for all of them. That does it for another episode of Flippin Bats. Until tomorrow, my friends, peace.